Hello, dear students of the third secondary grade, and welcome to a new episode of our program. We'll be carrying on with our general and final revision of physics, and I have here in the studio with me Mr. Mahmoud Al-Hawari, expert of physics at the Ministry of Education.
Hello.
So, hello, Mr. Mahmoud.
Hello, dear student. Hello, Mr. Yasser.
Let us carry on with our questions. I have this question which says, if the atomic mass of carbon 12 and the atomic mass of oxygen 16, the density of mercury is 1,000 or 13,600 kilogram per meter cube. The acceleration to gravity equals 10 meter per second power -2. So calculate the root mean square speed of carbon dioxide molecules at STP.
Okay. To calculate the root mean square speed at STP, we use this law. V equals square root 3 P over rho. P represent pressure. Rho represent density of carbon dioxide. And we know that the pressure is equal to atmospheric pressure because in the problem he wants the velocity at nbt. So we find the density of carbon dioxide. Rho equals mass over volume. The mass of 1 mole of carbon dioxide is equal to 12 plus 32 over 0.0224 times 10 power -3. So rho carbon dioxide is equal to 44 times 10 power -3 divided 0.0224. This is the volume of 1 mole. Then V equals root 3 times 1.013 times 10 power 5 over 44 times 10 power -3 over 0.0024. We can find the velocity by using calculator. The unit is meter per second. So we can move to another problem.
Okay, this one says, draw the equivalent circuit for an ND or AND gate and deduce the table which realizes it, and how a transistor may be used as an AND gate.
AND gate, as we can use transistor as AND gate with more emitter as shown in the figure. The first A and B, and this is AND gate. We can write the truth table as shown in the figure. A, B, and output 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, and 1, 1, 1. This is the truth table for AND. We use AND gate. Transistor must have more than one emitter. In this case, it has 2 emitter only. And
yeah, another one says, if the square speed of the propagated wave in a string is given by the relation v square equals 16 times 10 square over 1 times 10 -2 meter square per second -2.
From this equation, we find that V squared equals 16 times 10 power 2 over 1 times 10 power -2. 16 times 10 power 2, it represents the tension. So the tension equals 16 times 10 power 2. And mass per unit length, which is denoted by m, equals 1 times 10 power negative 2. So the tension is 16 times 10 power 2, and the mass per unit length is 1 times 10 power negative 2. We can also find the velocity. V equals square root 16 times 10 power 2 over 10 power negative 2, which is equal to 16. Then V equals 400 meter per second. So V squared equals 16 times 10 power 2 over 1 times 10 power negative 2. This law as this law, V squared equal Ft over m. Ft represented tension, which is equal to 16 times 10 power 2, and m represent 1 times 10 power negative 2, and the velocity will be equal 400 meter per second. And
find the value of each. The tension force in the string, this is number 1.
Number 1, tension equals 16 times 10 power 2. And the mass per unit length?
Yeah, and the mass per unit length of the string material,
which is equal to 1 times 10 power negative 2.
If the length of the string is 1 meter,
yeah,
vibrates in 5 segments, calculate the frequency of the harmonic produced.
In this case, we have the length of the string and the number of segments. We want to find that the frequency of this tone. Nu equals n over 2l square root Ft over m. Then nu equals n equals 5 over 2 times 1, the length of the wire, times root Ft 16 times 10 power 2 over 1 times 10 power negative 2. Then this value equals 400. 5 over 2, which is equal nu. We can cancel. The nu equal 1000 hertz. The frequency when the string gives 5 segments is equal to 1000 hertz.
Yeah. All right. Another question says, what is the condition required in order to, number 1, be the triangular prism in the position of minimum deviation?
Condition for prism in case of minimum deviation. In case of minimum deviation, I will draw the triangle and we explain on the drawing. The angle is equal to phi 1, this angle of incidence, and the angle of refraction equals theta 1, and the angle of incidence inside the prism phi 2, and the angle of emergence equals theta 2, and this is angle of deviation. So the condition in order to obtain prism in case of minimum deviation, phi 1 equals theta 2. It means angle of incidence is equal to angle of emergence. I will write it. Angle of incidence equal angle of emergence. And the two angles inside the prism, theta 1 equals phi 2. This is the condition in order to obtain prism in case of minimum deviation. The angle of incidence is equal to angle of emergence, and the two angles inside the prism, which are theta 1, is equal to phi 2. This is the condition of minimum deviation.
And also obtain the characteristic line spectrum of an element.
In order to obtain line spectra for element, first, element must has very high temperature. Number 2, the light emitted from it can be analyzed by spectrometer. And inside the spectrometer, a prism, a very important point, in case of minimum deviation, in order to analyze the light. This is the condition to obtain line spectra of any element.
And also, what is the condition required in order to emit atom an emission stimulated?
Stimulated emission. We know that there is a difference between stimulated emission and spontaneous emission. Stimulated emission has condition. The condition is the atom must be in excited state. It means at E2. The atom in case of excited state. Before lifetime is over, another external photon stimulate it to relax from E2 to E1, emitting 2 photons. This emission is called stimulated emission. So the condition of stimulated emission, the atom must be in excited state, and before the lifetime is over, the atom fall in it another photon. This another photon stimulates it to fall from E2 to E1. We can say it relaxes and emitting 1 photon in addition to the other one. In this case, is called stimulated emission.
How about the flow of the fluid of a steady flow?
Steady flow. There is a condition of steady flow. Condition must be fulfilled to obtain steady flow. First, the tube must be filled completely with liquid. The tube must filled with liquid completely, and the amount of liquid that enters the tube is equal to amount of liquid that leaves the tube. The amount of liquid enter the tube equal amount of liquid that leaves the tube. The third condition, the speed of fluid does not change with time. Speed of fluid not change with time. I will say it again. The condition must be fulfilled to obtain steady flow. The tube must be filled completely with liquid. The amount of liquid that enters the tube is equal to the amount of liquid that leaves the tube. And also, the speed of the fluid does not change with time. This is a condition of steady flow.
Another question says, mention the steps of an experiment to indicate that equal volumes of different gases expand equally when heated through the same temperature rise at constant pressure, and what is meant by the volume expansion coefficient of a gas at constant pressure.
This experiment to prove that equal volume of different gases expand equally when it rises to the same temperature at constant pressure. First, we get 2 flasks of equal volume. The first flask is filled with oxygen, and the second flask is filled with carbon dioxide, as shown in the figure. The first flask the first flask filled with carbon dioxide, CO2, and the second flask filled with oxygen. Two equal flasks. The two gases are trapped with a thread of mercury. And then we put them in boiling water. Boiling water. The step is get two equal flasks, one of them filled with carbon dioxide and the other filled with oxygen. The two flasks, the gas inside them are trapped with a thread of mercury. Then put the two flasks in boiling water. And after this we find that carbon dioxide and oxygen will expand, and pushing the thread of mercury through a distance. And in another container, the mercury will move on the same distance. We find that the distance moved by the thread of mercury in the two cases are equal, so the expansion of carbon dioxide is equal to the expansion of carbon dioxide. In this case, equal volume of different gases expand equally when they rise to the same temperature at constant pressure. Then we want to define coefficient of volume expansion, which is alpha, which is equal to 1 over 273 per Kelvin. Coefficient of volume expansion is the increase in unit volume. Increase in unit volume of a gas at constant pressure if the temperature is raised by 1 degree, raised by 1 degree or 1 Kelvin. So the experiment again, I will explain it again. Get two flasks. The two flasks are equal in volume. One of them filled with carbon dioxide and the other filled with oxygen. And the two gases are trapped with the thread of mercury. Then submerge the two flasks in boiling water. And after this, the two gases will expand, and pushing the mercury through a distance. In two cases, the distance moved by a thread of mercury are equal, so we can prove that the equal volume of different gases expand equally when they rise to the same temperature at constant pressure.
Okay, another problem says millimeter of resistance 4 ohm has a coil capable of carrying a current of 30 milliampere. It's desired to use it as an ohmmeter using an electric cell of 1.5 V having internal resistance 1 ohm. So calculate the value of the required standard resistor and calculate the external resistance needed to make the pointer deflect to 10 milliampere.
A millimeter of resistance 4 ohm, a coil of capable current of 30 milliampere. It is desired to use an ohmmeter using an electric cell of EMF 1.5 volt. This is the EMF of the battery. And the internal resistance equals 1 ohm. Calculate the value of required standard resistance. This is the apparatus about ohmmeter. We use the Ohm's law for closed circuit to find the standard resistance. I equals VB over R plus R. R capital letter, it represents the total resistance in the circuit. Current equals 30 times 10 power negative 3, which is equal to 1.5. The resistance is 4 ohm plus 1 ohm plus R standard. Then R standard equals R standard plus 5 equals 1.5 over 30 times 10 power negative 3. Then R standard equals 45 ohm. This is 45 ohm. This is the standard resistance which you found in the ohmmeter, is fixed resistance. And after this, we want the value of resistance in order to read 10 milliampere. We apply in the rule again. I equals, this is the current intensity, equals Vp over R plus R. Then the current intensity 10 milliampere, 10 times 10 power negative 3, in order to convert it into ampere. Vp equals 1.5, R equal 5 plus 1 plus 45 plus R. Then R plus 50 equals 1.5 over 10 times 10 power negative 3. Then R plus 50 equals 100. Then R 150, 150. Then R equal 150 minus 50 equals 100 ohm. This is the value of resistance must be inserted in the ohmmeter in order to read 10 milliampere. This
All
is
right.
about the problem.
Another question says
Yeah.
compare between
Yeah.
the mechanical and electromagnetic waves from the point of view of the medium to propagate through.
The comparison between mechanical wave and electromagnetic wave. Mechanical wave and electromagnetic wave. Mechanical wave can travel only through medium. Travel only through medium. I mean the medium that as solid or liquid or gas. But electromagnetic wave can travel either space or medium. So the difference between electromagnetic wave and a mechanical wave can travel only through a medium, and also electromagnetic wave can travel either space or medium. That's the difference between them in case of medium. Yeah.
And also compare between shunt resistance and multiplier resistor from the point of view of the method of utilization for each.
Yeah. The difference between shunt resistance and multiplier resistance. RS and RM. Shunt resistance is connected in parallel with galvanometer, and multiplier resistance connect in series. Shunt resistance is small resistance, and multiplier is high resistance. Shunt resistance to convert galvanometer into ammeter, and multiplier resistance converts galvanometer into voltmeter. Ammeter to measure the current intensity, and voltmeter to measure potential difference. And the connection of shunt resistance in parallel and the connection of multiplier in series. So if the question is deduce the law of shunt and deduce the law of multiplier, RS equals RG IG over I minus IG. We can deduce this law as follows. RG, RS, the current passing in IG in RG, and IS in RS. Since RG and RS parallel, then VG equal VS. The two resistors are in parallel, so the voltage across galvanometer is equal to the voltage across the shunt. Then IG RG equal IS RS, then RS equal IG RG over IS, or IG RG over I minus IG. We can deduce the law of multiplier. Law of multiplier. Rm equals V minus Vg over I. The draw is Rm, Rg and Rm are connected in series. So Vg and this Vm. The total voltage is equal V. Then V equal Vg plus Vm. Then Vm equal V minus Vg. Then Rm equals V minus Vg over I. This is the law of multiplier. And
Yeah, it says ordinary light beam and laser beam. We're also comparing here
with
in
respect,
the point of view of the diameter of the emitted light beam during propagation.
yeah, laser and light. Laser and light. Laser has collimation. It means its scattering power is very narrow. Scattering power very small. It means it makes small radius, but light not. Not collimation. Not collimation. I can tell you another difference between laser and light. Laser monochromatic and light does not monochromatic. Laser does not obey inverse square law, not obey inverse square law, and light obey inverse square law. This is the difference between laser and light.
Now let's move to another question. This one says, mention the scientific fundamental on which each of the following operate. Number one, levitated train.
Levitated train. Train, it can be called magnetic train. Magnetic train. It's scientific idea based on Meissner effect. Meissner effect. From this phenomena, we make levitated train. And
hydraulic press.
Hydraulic press. Press. It's scientific idea, Pascal principle. Pascal principle, which is when a pressure is applied to an enclosed liquid, pressure is transmitted undiminished to every part of the liquid and to the wall of the container. Then hydraulic press based on Pascal principle, which is when a pressure is applied to an enclosed liquid, pressure is transmitted undiminished to every part of the liquid and also to the wall of the container.
How about the submarine?
Submarine. It's scientific idea. Archimedes principle, or we can say buoyancy. Archimedes principle, when a body is wholly or partially immersed in liquid, it experiences by an upthrust force which is equal to the weight of displaced liquid. Also, there is a principle of floating. Principle of floating state that when a body floats, the buoyant force is equal to the weight of floating body, or it is equal to the weight of displaced liquid by the immersed part of the floating body. This is the principle of floating.
And the electron microscope?
Electron microscope based on electron microscope based on dual nature of electron. Dual nature of electron. I can write the rule to explain this. Lambda equals, lambda it means wavelength, equal h over m times v. H Planck constant, m mass, and v velocity. By increasing the velocity of electron, the wavelength decreases. So when the wavelength is decreased, we can magnify the virus, because the law of magnification states that the wavelength of the light used must be smaller than the object that you want to magnify it. This is the scientific idea of electron microscope. Lambda equal h over mv, h Planck constant, m mass, v velocity. M times v, it's called momentum. In electron microscope, we use magnetic lens and electrostatic lens in order to deviate or converge or diverge the cathode rays or beam of electrons. This is the idea of electron microscope.
Yeah, there is this problem, and we have here a table.
Yeah.
So I'll let you do it, Mr.
Yeah,
Mahmoud.
okay. A straight wire of 1 meter long, so L equals 1 meter. And current passing through it equal 20 ampere, I equal 20 ampere. Is placed uniform magnetic field of flux density B, it is unknown. And the relation between the acting force of wire by Newton and the sine angle between the wire and the field, the direction of field, the wire sine theta indicated by the following table. I will draw the table. This is graphical representation between the force acting and sine angle between the force and the field. And we have some given: 0.6, 0.2, 1.2, 0.4, 1.5, 0.5, and 1.8, 0.6, and 2.4 to 0.8, and 2.7, enough, and 0.9. And then draw graph relating between force on y-axis and sine theta on x-axis. This is the order of this problem. Draw graphical representation between the force and the sine angle between the force and the field. Then in the problem, the order is draw the force on y-axis. So we must draw y and x-axis. The force on y-axis and sine theta on x-axis. This is the order of this problem. And then we make steps to make graphical representation, and we make the scale is uniform. We find that the force start with 0.6 to 2.7. We can make the scale is 0, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, and 1, and so on. And the scale of sine theta, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, and so on. We find the graph will be straight line. So we find the slope of this graph. The slope equal delta F over delta T. We can take two reading from the table. The two reading is delta F over delta theta. delta sine theta equals 1.2 minus 1.5 minus 1.2 equal 0.3 over 0.5 over 0.1, 0.1 is equal to 3. Then f over sine theta equals 3. From this law, f equal LIB. F equals LIB, which is equal over sine theta equal 3. We can find from this law f equal LIB sine theta. We have f over sine theta, which is equal to 3, which is equal to L equals 1 time current, which is equal to 20. We can find B. Then B equals 3 over 20 Tesla. This is the value of magnetic flux density, and we can find the other from the graph. And
now let's move to another type of questions. This one says, mention one condition to get each of the following.
yeah,
And number one, the laser action.
laser action. The laser action, we know that laser action, all atoms must be excited. It means, that means in case of inversion population, that is laser action. The condition is all the atom must be in case of inversion population, or all atom must be in excited state.
And the emission of electrons from the surface of a metal.
Emission of electron from a surface of metal, it depends on the frequency of light. The frequency of light emitted on the metal, must be greater than the critical frequency. So the condition is frequency of light emitted on metal must be greater than critical frequency. In this case, electron will be liberated. And steady?
Yeah, the steady flow of a liquid through a tube.
We answered in the previous, the steady flow, the condition of steady flow, tube must be filled completely with liquid. Amount of liquid that enters the tube is equal to amount of liquid that leaves the tube. The speed of the fluid does not speed with time. But I want to give you an advice in this point. If the speed is increased, the flow will be turbulent flow, not steady flow. And
torque acting on a rectangular coil carrying current placed in a magnetic field that is equal to 0.
when the torque equals 0, we can back to the rule. Torque equal B I A N sine theta. If the coil is perpendicular, the torque equals 0. The torque equal 0. That means the two forces are equal in magnitude and opposite in direction. Between them there is a distance, and also the torque will be in this case equal 0. And
okay, explain an experiment to prove that at constant volume equal pressure of gases increase equally when heated through the same range of temperature.
equal pressure, in the previous question we proved that equal volume of constant gases expand equally when they rise to the same temperature. In this we want to prove that the pressure will increase equally at the same quantity of gas if they have the same rise in temperature. We get two flasks or one flask as shown in the figure containing gas and connected to manometric tube, and this to the point X containing mercury. Then put this in boiling water. We find the gas will be expanded and the mark of mercury will fall to the point X. We can make another draw. We find that the mark of X fall down, and after this we can pour some of mercury, and we find that as the increase of temperature, the pressure will increase. So equal pressure of different gases increases as beta equal B100 minus B0 over 100 times B0. This is experiment to prove that equal pressure of constant volume increases at the same rise in temperature.
Okay, this one says a string of 1 meter length emits a tone of frequency 200 hertz given by the relation 200 equals 2 root ft over m. So calculate, number one, the velocity of propagation of the wave in the string and the wavelength and the frequency of the second overtone.
Very good. First, the equation is 200 equals 2 root ft over m. Root ft over m, it represents the velocity. Then 200 equals 2 times v, then v equals 200 over 2 equals 100 meter per second. This is the velocity. And after this, we want to find the wavelength. From this equation, we know that nu equals n over 2L root ft over m. From this equation, wavelength equals 1 over 2. It means half meter. This is the wavelength. And the third, the frequency of second overtone. We know that second overtone, n equal 3 segments, and the velocity equals 100, and the length is 1 meter. Second overtone, which is equal to n equals 3. Nu equals n over 2L root ft over m. Nu equals n equals 3. 2 times 1 root ft over m, it is equal to 100. Then frequency is equal to 300 divided 2, which is equal to 150 hertz. This is the frequency of second overtone.
Yeah, then compare between each of the following. Number one, the shunt resistor and multiply resistor, but with respect to connection method with the galvanometer. This is something we did before, but perhaps the requirement here is different, right?
As we mentioned before, the shunt resistance is connected to galvanometer in parallel in order to convert galvanometer into a meter. And the multiply resistance is high resistance connect in series with galvanometer in order to convert it into voltmeter. That's the difference between the shunt and the multiplier in the way of connection.
Also compare between the spontaneous emissions and stimulated emissions with respect to conformity to the inverse square law.
Inverse square law. First, I will explain what's meant by inverse square law. If the light travels through long distance, it loses its intensity. So inverse square law, I inversely proportional to d squared. The intensity of light is inversely proportional to d squared. As the intensity of light increases, the distance decreases, and vice versa. In case of spontaneous emission, and in case of stimulated emission, spontaneous emission follow inverse square law, follow inverse square law, but stimulated emission not follow inverse square law. So the big difference between spontaneous and stimulated emission: spontaneous emission follow inverse square law. It means when the light moves through great distance, the intensity will be decreased. But in case of stimulated emission, the light does not lose its intensity as the distance increases.
And also compare between the N-type and the P-type with respect to the type of charge carriers.
We know that the difference between N-type and P-type, we know that before I explain about how to increase conductivity of semiconductor as silicon. If we want to increase its electrical conductivity by two methods, first method by heating or by doping. In case of B-type, we doped the silicon with element of third group, and in case of N-type, we doped the silicon with element of fifth group. So this is the difference between B-type and N-type. We want to comparison in question. You can tell me a question again? Yeah.
Yeah, it says N-type
And B-type.
and P-type with respect to the type of charge carriers.
Yeah. In N-type, the charge carrier will be electron, and in B-type, the charge carrier is positive hole. So in N-type, the charge carrier is electron, and we can call it donor. And in B-type, the charge carrier is hole. We can call it acceptor. Yeah.
Also compare between AND gate and OR gate with respect to the equivalent drawing.
There is a difference between OR and gate. OR gate first, OR gate as shown in the figure. A and B. This OR gate. And gate A and B. OR in parallel, A and B in parallel, and gate A and B are series. The difference between OR and, yeah.
So we're done with it. Now let's move to another one. Mention without explanation three characters or three characteristics of number one, X-rays.
Characteristics of X-rays or properties of X-rays. First, it has ionizing power. Or ionized gases. Number two, penetrate through crystal. It means it has high penetrating power. Effect on photographic plate. Effect on photographic plate. Its energy equal h nu, which is h c over lambda, energy of X-rays. And this
also
is the characteristic of X-rays.
Yeah, how about the characteristics of Lehman's series?
Lehman series. Lehman series from hydrogen spectrum when electrons fall to level K, emitting rays which is ultraviolet. It has high frequency and short wavelength. So Lehman series, when electron falls from higher energy level to level K, emitting an ultraviolet rays. These ultraviolet rays has high frequency and very short wavelength.
Okay, a free electron moves in a medium of temperature, whatever the temperature.
Let it
22? 27,
yeah.
All right, degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
So calculate, number one, the mean kinetic energy of the electron,
Yeah.
and the root mean square velocity of the electron.
Yeah.
Given that Boltzmann constant equals 1.38 times 10 power negative 23.
Yeah.
Mass of the electron equals 9.1 times 10 power negative 31 kilogram.
Yeah. We first find the kinetic energy of electron. Ke equals 3/2 kT. 3/2 times K, 1.38 times 10 power negative 23 times 300. We can find the kinetic energy of electron. Ke equals 450 times 1.35 times 10 power negative 38 times 10 power negative 23. By using calculator, we can find the kinetic energy, which is equal joule. Its unit is joule. And after this, we want to find the root mean square speed. V equals root 3 RT